Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on Facebook Live to talk about the GRE. My name is Keala Busse. I am an intern with the Virtual Student Federal Service, currently working with Education USA in Montenegro. I also happen to be a senior at Arizona State University in Phoenix, Arizona. I am currently studying public service and public policy, as well as political science. And today I'm going to be talking about the GRE, what the GRE looks like, a little bit about the format of the exam, how you should go about studying. And then at the end, I'm going to offer a few tips for the day of testing. So if you have any comments or questions, you can drop them in the chat, and if we have time to answer them, we will do that at the end. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and get started by simply answering the question, what is the GRE? So the GRE itself can be very intimidating, as most of you know, if you're prepping to go to graduate school. It is the graduate record examination. And the GRE, I've heard many opinions about the GRE, that it's, the college level SAT, and that it is essentially the exam that graduate school, so for master's programs or PhD programs, it is the exam that these schools use to test your ability to perform at a graduate level. And so the GRE is going to consist of 3 different sections. You're going to have an analytical writing section. You're also going to have a verbal and a quantitative section. And your score when you're done taking the GRE is going to be your verbal score, your quant score, and then you are also scored on analytical writing. So each one of these sections is going to be scored on a level from 130 to 170. 130 is the minimum score, 170 is the maximum score you can receive, with your analytical writing score receiving a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 6. And when you take the exam, your analytical writing portion is going to be the first portion of the exam. And the analytical writing is going to consist of 2 different sections. So that there's going to be an analyze an issue portion and analyze an argument portion. With the analyze an issue, you're going to have 30 minutes to basically read an issue. It might be a philosophical argument or a commonly heard phrase or something of that nature. And you're going to be asked to talk about it, whether or not you find truth in it. And what the readers are looking for is that you can support your own opinions with evidence or with your own experience, and write in an analytical and concise manner. And for this section, you're only going to have 30 minutes. So you want to leave yourself enough time to be able to go back and revise, edit, look things over, things like that. And then immediately after, you're going to move into the analyze an argument section. So you might be presented with a quote from a piece of research or a quote from a novel, something of that nature. And you're going to be asked to analyze the argument for its validity. You might also be asked to discuss whether or not there are alternative explanations or claims for what the author is, what the author's main argument is. And with the analyze an argument, you're also going to have 30 minutes to complete the task. So you'll want to leave a few minutes at the end to I apologize for the sound. It is, there's construction going on outside, and I am not able to escape from it. So I do apologize that it will be passing intermittently throughout. Now for the next sections on the GRE, you're going to have 2 verbal sections and 2 quantitative sections. And then you're also going to have what is called like an experimental section. And so the experimental section is not graded. It's mainly just used for the makers of the exam, just to throw in a section where they can test out some questions and things like that, possibly for later test takers. And so your verbal section, there's going to be 2 of these. Each is going to be 30 minutes long, and you are going to have to read through passages. You're going to have fill in the blanks with different words. And so these fill in the blanks might look like just putting in 1 word. You might have a 3-word fill in the blank. And then there's also a question type that will ask you for the word of best fit, and then it's also going to ask you for a word that's a synonym to it. So that's going to be a checkbox type of question, so you'll have 2 answers for 1 question. And then after the verbal section, it's going to be followed by a quantitative section. There's going to be 2 of these, and these are going to be 35 minutes long. The quantitative section, you can use a calculator. And the quantitative section is going to have a variety of question types. So you might have word problems, multiple choice, and then there's also going to be some fill in the blank. And then overall, the exam with the experimental section is going to take you around 3 hours and 40 minutes to 4.5 hours, depending on whether or not you are able to take a break and things like that. I actually just happened to take the GRE yesterday, and it took me around 4 hours and 35 minutes. So I did take the breaks in between sections, which are 60 seconds long. And then I also took the entire break that was allotted to me. Okay, so that covers basically the format of the exam, what the exam is going to look like. This information is available online. So if you need to, if you forget what sections or what the format's going to look like, you can look up on the ETS website. ETS is the service that administers the GRE, and there's more detailed information about the exam, the structure, and things like that. So the next question, I think so many people are scared, almost scared to consider, scared to ask is, how consequential is the GRE? If I don't do well, am I going to not be able to get into graduate school in the US? How heavily is the GRE weighed in my application? And honestly, this is going to vary by school. And so some schools are going to possibly weigh your GRE scores a little bit heavier than other schools. But at the end of the day, if you are not satisfied with your GRE score, or if you don't have enough time to study as you would like due to, demands with school, family, work, things like that, you can always retake the GRE. So the GRE, you don't have one shot. It's not the end all be all. You can take it multiple times if you need to. The only con with taking the GRE multiple times is that it is pretty expensive. And so there is that limitation there. But you can retake it. And every time you take it, you will probably score better and better as long as you're putting in the effort to really study and to see that improvement over time. But I would say now more than ever before, graduate schools are taking a more well-rounded approach to the application process. And so, if you take the GRE 1, 2, 3 times and you still aren't performing as well as you like, but you have a great resume and you have a great GPA, extracurriculars, and you're overall a well-rounded student, I wouldn't worry too much about the GRE, because schools are not going to make a letter for acceptance or to reject you solely based on the GRE. And I know it's probably hard to let go of some of those anxieties, and the test is anxiety inducing in itself, but just try to remember that if you present yourself as a well-rounded student, that schools are going to recognize that, and that you can always, retake the GRE and try to do as best as you can. All right, so the next question I'm going to explore a little bit is when and how should you start studying? In my opinion, I think that it is best to start studying as soon as possible. So as soon as you start to think, maybe I want to get my master's degree, or I want to explore a PhD, look up your school requirements. So know whether or not your school is going to require the GRE. They most likely will. And once you find this out, start exploring your options for test preparation and see what resources are available to you. The earlier you start this process, even if you don't start studying immediately, but you start making a schedule or narrowing down some of your options, the better, because the exam is going to revisit some concepts that you might not have any experience with since maybe late high school or early in your undergraduate career. And so it's good to just, refresh and pull some of these from your subconscious brain that might have been hiding for a while. For me, I started studying in February of this year, and then I did take the exam in November. So I was on about, I would say the actual time I took to study was about 8.5 months. I did not study consistently by any means. It definitely was sporadic studying, and I had some weeks where I was very invested in studying, and then other weeks where, life gets in the way and I wasn't able to study. And that's okay, as long as you are able to, come back to your studying schedule and you don't let too much time go by without studying. But an overall recommended time for studying would be about 6 months, depending on how long it's been since you've, done math or written an essay. Most of us are always, reading or writing in classes, but the section that people are most worried about with the GRE is the quantitative section, since many liberal arts degrees don't require many math classes throughout college. And so it might have been a few years since the last time you had taken a math class. A good way to start to prep is if you have any free time in your schedule and you know that, for example, you haven't taken a calculus course in a few semesters, and you have some space in your schedule, go ahead and throw in a basic calculus course, or possibly an economics course, or a course of that nature, to really just help you revisit concepts and explore some mathematical theories that you might not have been exposed to for the last few semesters. Taking a course like that, a refresher course, would honestly be the best way to prep for the GRE quantitative section, even though I know that many people don't have that sort of flexibility in their schedule, and that's totally okay. There are so many other options for studying. One of these is, one of my personal favorites is the Princeton Review. The Princeton Review has different levels of test preparation. So if you just are looking for more of like a basic course, that's a little bit on the cheaper end, they offer that. But if you're also looking for one-on-one tutoring and intensive sessions, the Princeton Review also offers that as well. And they make a lot of really great textbooks. They're well known for their GRE preparation. So that's Princeton Review is a great resource to seek out for when you decide to start studying. There are also many podcasts. I personally, when I was studying for the GRE, did not get into podcasts. I'm not 100% a podcast person yet, but podcasts are another great way to listen to words that are commonly used on the GRE, or to listen to argument statements and things like that. I have a few friends who have a few podcasts that they really got into the last few weeks, And so if you look up GRE podcasts, I know there are plenty out there available for you to listen in on. You can do this while driving in the car, while making dinner, pretty much any sort. If you need any sort of background noise, a podcast can be a great source for this background noise. Another great resource, I am a reader. I enjoy flipping open a book and reading what I need to study. And so I do have a few books that I've been using that I wanted to show to all of you. One is all of these I purchased on Amazon. So you can probably find them on most websites, bookstores, things like that. But this one is the Barron's, The Leader in Test Preparation, Essential Words for the GRE. This was an amazing tool to utilize. So this book has over 800 frequently used GRE words. Within the book, it organizes it alphabetically. And so you're presented with just a variety of words. So these are all words that start with E, some of the words exacerbate, exculpate, exhort, words like that. And then after it gives you the word and the definition, it then moves the section into a matching portion. It looks like that. Followed by fill in the blank. And then what's really cool about this book that I didn't, that none of the other verbal resources I used had were these sections called sense and nonsense. You can see that. And so with the sense and nonsense, it would give you a sentence that either makes sense or doesn't make sense using the words that you just had learned. And this is a good way to think about, okay, I see this word in this sentence. Does this word fit and does it make sense in the context of this sentence? And so that's a really great section. I greatly appreciate this book. And then towards the end, it pulls roots of words. And so if you know, many words have Latin roots, and if you're able to identify the roots in words during an exam or while you're prepping, it will be easier to determine the definition of that word. And so, yeah, this is a really great resource, Essential Words for the GRE. I highly recommend this book. It has a whole study plan as well at the beginning. So if you are pressed for time and you only have 12 weeks to prep for the GRE, it basically talks you through how you want to utilize the book, what sections you want to complete by week. If you have, only 4 weeks to study, it talks about that study plan. Really great resource. One of my personal favorites. And then I also, I am not a math person. And so math was the one thing I needed to study the most for. And this is the GRE GMAT, A Systematic Approach. Take a look at that. This book I also found on Amazon. It was used. Don't worry about the GMAT portion. That's for MBA programs. Typically, students will take the GMAT. But this book is amazing because not only does it have a lot of practice questions, but it has like little lesson plans at the beginning. So if it's been a while since you visited probability and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't remember anything about probability, how do I use probability? There is an entire section at the beginning that just discusses probability, how you use probability, some examples of some questions on the exam that might involve probability. It also goes into detail about geometry, line segments, different formulas, triangle, polygon formulas, things like that. More towards the end of this book is going to be more focused on the GMAT. However, the first portion, and I would say about 2/3 of the book, covers concepts that are used on the GRE. So this is really great resource. I think this cost me around $14 US. The other book was only $8, super cheap, really affordable. Great resources. And then the last one I wanted to show to all of you is made by the ETS, which are the test creators. And so there's no better resource than the resource created by the person, the people that make the exam. And so this one is the verbal reasoning. It came with a CD, if you didn't notice it falling out. And so with this book, this is all verbal. They also have a quantitative version, workbooks and things like that. ETS has so many different versions available, but this book will give you a lot of like practice passages that look literally identical to what the actual exam looks like. And since I took it yesterday, I know for sure that that's a fact. So this is another really great resource if you can get access to it. And if you are possibly concerned at all about having access to these resources or a certain edition in particular that I mentioned, American Corner is also going to have these different versions available or similar editions and other resources. So don't worry if you don't have personal access to these, or if you're concerned about, you know, how am I going to start studying, things like that, financial concerns. There are definitely some options available to you through American Corner. So don't stress about it. Okay, so for while you're studying and then after you got these books, other resources, you're all ready to go and start your studying journey. So what does studying look like? I think the best way you can go about studying is take as many practice tests as possible. So if you are able to get access to paper or even online versions of full-length GRE tests, this is going to be the best way to familiarize yourself with the structure of the exam as well as the timing constraint. And 30 minutes to answer 20 questions doesn't seem too bad. But when you're actually taking the exam and you're in the exam room, it definitely passes by extremely quickly. And, you know, towards the end of my exam yesterday, I was rushing through the last 5 questions because I only had 3 minutes left. I definitely could have prepped more in terms of being more comfortable with the timing of the exam. And when I was taking my practice exams, I would hardly ever time myself because I didn't want to put that pressure. I just wanted to be able to give myself enough time to work through things and think through things. But when it comes down to it, the exam is timed. And once you've hit the time limit, you're cut off. And so you do want to familiarize yourself with those time constraints. So from day one, when you start studying and taking practice tests, definitely time yourself and work on just being quick and not taking or spending too much time answering one question in particular. And also another just general tip of advice I have when you're studying is learn as many words as possible. I know sometimes some of the words that the GRE recommends are words that I had never heard in my entire life, but a lot of them are commonly used words that you'll see in research papers or old English novels and things like that. So just, you know, start reading as much as possible, like in your free time, and learning new vocabulary words every day if you can. Great tool that I used, a classic, are flashcards. And so I had my, this is just a little stack of the flashcards I use, but I would take these out if I was sitting on the couch, sitting at my desk, just doing mindless work. And I would look at the word, flip it over, I'd have a definition and typically a sentence that the word is used in. And just flipping through these over the course of a few months, you definitely will be surprised as to how many words you end up picking up. And also it kind of became a fun little game where I would be listening to, watching a TV show or talking with a friend or reading through an assignment for class. And I would start to identify GRE words within the shows or the papers I was reading. And so that I was like, oh, there's a GRE word. And so it kind of becomes a little fun. You realize that you're starting to learn more than you probably thought you were going to. So that covers the studying section. The last portion that I wanted to talk to all of you about today is going to be the actual day of the exam and when you're approaching the exam and how to relieve some of those anxieties and things like that. And so in the few days leading up to the GRE, I know it's probably a habit for overachievers like myself to want to cram study and get as much information absorbed as possible. And this is not a good thing to do. You do not want to cram study or even think that this is an exam that you can cram study for last minute. It definitely is not, and you do not want to waste your money paying for an exam if you are not going to actually put in the effort to study for a few months. I do not recommend it. I don't think it's a good idea. And people who have taken the GRE will probably also tell you that cram studying is not a good idea. If anything, in the days leading up to the exam and the night before the exam, you want to take it easy, de-stress, do self-care, and take care of yourself mentally, because when you're more clear-minded, you're going to do well in the exam versus, staying up until 3, 4 a.m. the night before, and then, waking up 6 hours later, you're foggy minded, you didn't get enough rest. It's a recipe for disaster. And so go to bed early the night before the exam. In the morning, I didn't really want to eat a lot of food. I know some people are not breakfast people at all, and that's totally okay. I would say try to eat like a light snack, nuts, any kind of sort of dried fruit. I really like their little like fruit blended like fruit pouches. I grabbed one of those on the way to the exam. And that was, enough, as much fuel as I needed. And during the exam, during your break, if you decide to take it, you'll also be able to eat a snack if you bring it. So the maximum time you have to go without eating is about 2 hours. So don't worry too much about that. But yeah, so just try to practice as much self-care in the days leading up to the exam as possible. De-stress, really try to clear your mind and go into the exam well rested and with a positive mindset. If you're going to the exam, stressed out and, I just studied all of these formulas the night before and I'm trying to remember everything, and you're going in and you're worked up, it's not going to be a recipe for success, because you're going to sit down and you might not do as well in the first few sections as you would have hoped. Let's see what else. Ultimately, when you are taking the exam, like I had mentioned earlier, don't take too much time on one question in particular. I know yesterday when I was taking the exam, there was a question in the verbal section that was almost like it was really getting to me, because I just did not understand what the question was really asking. And so I probably stared at it, I want to say for 3.5 minutes, and still ended up guessing. Do not do this to yourself. If the answer isn't apparent within 1 to 2 minutes, don't spend much more time staring at it or checking one box and going back and checking another and switching your answer. Try to eliminate whatever answer is absolutely incorrect, and guess from there, because you don't get points for guessing or for leaving. Well, you don't want to leave an answer blank. Essentially, leaving an answer blank is not going to be beneficial to you, because the chances of you guessing it, if you have narrowed it down to 2, is a 50-50 chance. When I was doing practice exams, I left a lot of questions blank as I was moving through, but yesterday, the day of the examination, I did not skip any. So even at the very end, my second to last quantitative section, I had about 3 questions left with a minute remaining, and I did not leave those blank. I went ahead and guessed, and there was a good chance that I actually might have gotten 1 or 2 or even 3 of those right. I won't know until I get my exam back, but it's just good to not leave any blank, eliminate as many wrong answers as you can as you're working through it, and guess if you absolutely have to. And if you do have time left over at the end of your sections, you can go back and review your work. I did not personally have time to do this, but there's an option to mark questions in particular. And then you can, if you mark them, you can go back and review your work before you're done. And overall, when the exam is said and done, you will receive your score at the end. If you're taking the version of the GRE that's on the computer, it will give you your quantitative and your verbal score immediately after. Sometimes, if you're like myself, you might have done a lot of preparation, and your score might have surprised you in terms of doing really great on one section and doing poorly on another. And ultimately that's okay. You know, if you get your scores back and it's not what you expected and you feel like you put in a lot of effort, I truly believe that testing anxiety is real, and that standardized tests do require you to sit down for an extended period of time and to, you know, apply everything you've learned in the public education system to one exam. That's high stakes. And for some people that is anxiety inducing, and not everybody has the skill set to successfully master a standardized test. And I've never been great at standardized tests, and I definitely get testing anxiety, and that's just something that I know about myself. And, you know, if you don't do as well, don't stress yourself out. Like I said at the beginning, if you're applying to the right graduate school, no matter what score you get, they're going to see all of the other aspects of your application, your essays, your grades in math, and maybe you didn't do as well in the quantitative section, but you've always gotten A's in your statistics and calculus courses and things like that. So definitely don't stress yourself out too much if you don't do as well in the exam as you would like. Like I said, you can always retake it, go back and study. And, you know, once you're actually in the testing environment, you're sitting there for 4.5 hours, I think that's the best experience you can get. You know what the exam feels like, looks like, and all of that. And so take what you learned from that exam and, you know, move forward in studying, and ultimately just don't give up. If you are unsatisfied with your score and you want to do better and you know you can do better, or you had a bad day, you know, go ahead and do that. Study, take the exam again, and, you know, see what comes out of that. So those are my overall tips for taking the GRE. If there's any questions, I don't know if we're taking questions or not, but I appreciate all of you tuning in and listening to me. Good luck in your graduate school pursuits and studying for the exam. It's not as horrible as they make it seem. I promise you. I just took it yesterday. But yeah, keep working hard and keep pursuing everything that following your dreams.